Hi everyone, welcome to this continuation of our introduction to computer science and computer programming. Today we're going to be looking at two-dimensional arrays, and I will be using Java as my language of choice. Okay, to help us think about this concept of two-dimensional arrays, we're going to look at a little scenario. This scenario is a hotel, a tiny hotel in the south of England, offers a breakfast menu to its guests. And as you can see, it's a very limited breakfast menu. In fact, on any given day of the week, there is only one item available. Now, if I was to create a computer program to store this information and play with this information, I'm probably going to set up a I'm going to set up a 5-element string array. Okay, this will be element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3, and element 4. So here I've got 5 elements, and within each element they reference a string. So if I was going to write one line of code, which would allow me to do this in Java, this would be what I would write. A one-dimensional string array. I'm giving it a reference of breakfasts, and I'm quickly populating it with 5 strings. This is element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3, and element 4. So hopefully there are no particular surprises with that line of code, and we're going to move on to slightly complicate the scenario. Let's say that our computer program is not just going to store the breakfast items for each day of the week, it's also going to store the lunch items and the dinner items. Now, it would be very easy for me to create a 15-element string array to store all of this data, because there are indeed 15 pieces of data now. 5 breakfasts, 5 lunches, and 5 dinners. But why don't I take advantage of the fact that this is very kind of grid-like in its layout? Well, I guess it does have 2 dimensions now, doesn't it? It has rows. There are 3 rows, and it has columns. There are 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I think about this in a computer science-y type programming kind of way, I could say, okay, this is going to be row 0, this is going to be row 1, and this is going to be row 2. And if I look at the columns, this is going to be column 0, this is going to be column 1, this is going to be column 2, etc. So this element here in a 2-dimensional array will have a reference of row 0, column 0. This has a reference of row 0, column 1, row 0, column 2, row 0, column 3, and row 0, column 4. And then we can move on to the next row. Notice that when we move on to the next row, the row reference number changes. It becomes 1, but we're just going to start again at 0 with the columns. Just start again. So row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2, row 1, column 3, row 1, column 4. And then our row number will change, but we reset the column to 0 and we start again. Row 2, column 0, row 2, column 1, etc. So let's look at how to do this using a computer programming language. I will be using Java. The first thing I'm going to do is set up a 2-dimensional string array called, I'm going to call mine menu. And this will be a new 2-dimensional string array. And now we have to think about the size of this thing. Well, in my example, there are 3 rows and there are 5 columns. In fact, to help us visualize this a little bit more, I'm going to set up a variable called rows, and I'm going to give it a value of 3, because there are 3 rows. And I'm going to set up another variable called cols, and I'm going to give it a value of 5. And instead of using numbers here, I'm just going to use the variable references that we've got. So here we have a reference to a two-dimensional string array which has 3 rows and 5 columns. Brilliant. Notice we do not have any strings yet. There is no data in this array yet. I have simply constructed a two-dimensional string array which is now ready to accept data to each of its elements. Now remember the element references. This element is referenced by row 0, column 0. This is 0, 0. This is 0, 1. This is 0, 2. This is 0, 3. And this is 0, 4. So let's set that up right now. Menu 0, 0 is equal to, or is going to be assigned, porridge. And menu 0, 1, this is the second column in the first row, is going to be something like fruit salad. And menu, we're still in the first row, this is row 0. I'm going on to the next column now, is going to be assigned something like bacon. And I'm still in the first row, it's row 0. We'll move on to the next column, which is 3. And I can't remember what examples I had. I'm just going to stick toast in here. But I do remember the final column in row 0 was definitely porridge. We do finish the week on Friday with porridge. And why wouldn't you? So I have just populated the first row of my two-dimensional string array with data. And remember, the first row has 5 columns. The first row has 5 columns. In fact, every row has 5 columns in this example. So now we can simply, let's just copy that. Let's move on to the next row. This is now row 1. Row 1 refers to lunch items, so we'll stick in some, what was for lunch? Tofu salad. I think it was pea soup. There may have been something like baba ganoush. Maybe that was for dinner, I can't remember. What else would be a nice lunch? We're definitely going to have some chicken rice. And we're probably going to have as well some clam chowder soup. Why not? Come on. Enjoy yourselves. And now we're going to move on to the final row, which also has 5 columns, and we're talking about dinner. So we'll put in some roast beef. We'll stick in some roast chicken. We'll have some roast lamb. Just roast, isn't it? We'll roast everything. And we'll put in some roast beef. We already have roast beef, don't we? Let's just have a bit of variety. And can I think of any other animal that we can roast? Nope, so I'm just going to have some roast tomato. That's fine. So here we have set up 3 rows of data. Each row has 5 columns, and each reference now references a string. So we're going to finish this video by looking at how to loop through the two-dimensional array to display the contents. So I'm just going to set up a for loop here. I'm going to start with an integer I, which is equal to 0, and I'm going to loop through the rows first. So there are 3 rows. So this will be 0, and then 1, and then 2, and it will stop. Now, when I is equal to 0, that's here, I want to then loop through the columns of that row. So I'm going to create another for loop. For int, well, we've already used I, let's use j. For int j equals 0 to j is less than, well, this time we're looping through the columns. So the number of columns is 5, so we'll stick a 5 in there, j++. And all I want to do is system.out.print menu I j. And let's just add a comma and a space after each item is displayed. We'll have a look at what this looks like in a minute. So let's just have a look at what's going on here. We come into this for loop and I is equal to 0. We then come into this for loop where j is equal to 0, and we will print out menu 0, 0. Well, that's porridge. And then j increments. J becomes 1. So we'll print out menu 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, and that's when this loop finishes. When j becomes 4, it stops. We go back up here. I becomes 1 this time. We move into the second row. I increments to 1. So menu 1, well, j starts at 0 again. So 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and then it stops. And we go back up here, and I becomes 2. J resets to 0. So menu 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, and then everything stops. So after we print out one row of data, after this for loop here, before we go on to the next row, I'm just going to put in a system.out.println just to make a new line for the next row. So print out the row, then make a new line, and then go to the next row. Print out the row, make a new line, and then go to the next row. And we're just going to loop through it like that. So I'm going to run this, and I will show you what it looks like. And let me show you what it looks like. This is quite hysterical. A syntax error! Insert semicolon. Here. And let's run that again. Boom! Okay, so it's printed out the contents of my two-dimensional string array. This is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. And then we move on to a new row, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, etc. So get into your computer programming development environment and have a go. If you've got a new idea of a scenario that could use a two-dimensional array, please use it. But if you want to just copy my idea and just play with it until you can figure out how it works, you're more than welcome to do that too.